Serving Nigerian Senator, Prince Chinedu Munir Nwoko, well known as Ned Nwoko, has been accused of sending policemen to arrest his in-laws, after his fourth wife and a popular Nollywood super actress, Regina Daniels, ran out of the matrimonial home over alleged domestic violence, intimidation, oppressions and maltreatment like a nobody in the senator's house. The Serving Nigeria Senator, Ned Nwoko, accused the absconded wife, Regina Daniels, of substance abuse, denying her allegations of domestic violence, adding, he made efforts to stop her addict of substance abuse, hence the wife, Regina Daniels, became violent and she started assaulting the domestic staff and destroying properties in the house, according to Ned Nwoko in a statement he had issued less than 48 hours after the star actress ran away from her matrimonial home in October last month. While I took Moon to the hospital, a scene of chaos unfolded at home, orchestrated by Sammy, Regina's main drug supplier. Another known supplier of drugs to Regina is the tiny evil devil called Ann. In a swift reaction to the arrest of his son and Regina Daniels' brother yesterday, Rita Daniels, the mother-in-law, accused the Serving Nigeria Senator, Ned Nwoko, of trying to bite the finger that fed him, saying, Ned Nwoko married her daughter because she was a popular actress, and the senator needed the high star of her status to boost his fallen star or his political relevance in the Nigeria politics, saying, the senator will go down for arresting her children, adding that, people should take a look at Ned Nwoko's children, if any of them looked like from a billionaire father, although, the actual numbers of the in-laws arrested is yet to be officially stated, as one of the Regina Daniels sisters, initially said to be arrested alongside with the brother, was seen outside the police station in Lagos State on Monday night in a video made available online by Regina Daniels' family. Verbatim, Regina Daniels' mother, Rita Daniels, while she was being video recorded and screaming with a very loud, painful voice in front of the police station at night yesterday, said, "You married my daughter because you wanted someone with high star to boost your fallen star. If you think you can bite the finger that fed you, you'll go down. Regina gave you $50,000 to support your election. All my resources also went into that same election. You are mad." Nigeria media reported that the arrests came days after actress Regina Daniels allegedly filed for divorce, accusing him of domestic violence. Calling out the senator amid the marital crisis on Monday, Regina disclosed that her elder brother and sister had been arrested. While appealing to the general public for urgent help, the 24-year-old, in a series of posts on her Instagram page, attributed her siblings' arrest and detention to an alleged attempt by her husband to force her into a rehabilitation center. "Someone please, help me. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I never thought I would do this, but my big brother and big sister have been arrested. My baby sister might be arrested as well until I return and, according to him, return to rehab. Don't even get me started on telling the world what you did to me with your stupid rehab talk," Daniels wrote. "You said I'm a drug addict. What other name can you call me? A prostitute? Must things go completely south if partners are no longer interested?" Ned Nwoko, in a statement issued last month in October, said, "Regina was not always like this. Her current battle with drugs and alcohol abuse is the root of our problem. She must continue her rehabilitation program, or I fear for her life and safety. Now she has moved to a place where she will have unrestricted access to drugs. I have other wives, and none will ever accuse me of violence. Regina is the violent one here, slapping and hitting 3 staff in the past 48 hours and destroying property, including cars and windows, for no just cause. The truth is, I have set a clear condition for her to accept rehab in Asokoro or outside Nigeria, especially Jordan, where she will not have access to drugs." A clear-headed Regina would have taken Moon to the hospital, but instead she even threatened to kill our resident nurse for exposing her drugs abuse. "While I took Moon to the hospital, a scene of chaos unfolded at home, orchestrated by Sammy, Regina's main drug supplier. Another known supplier of drugs to Regina is the tiny evil devil called Ann."
A gift! You wanted a crown! You wanted somebody with a high star so that they can boost your own, your falling star! You wanted a high star to boost your falling star. I swallowed it and kept quiet. I was covering you. Now, first you have the same way you went up, you will come down. If you think you can bite the finger that fed you, you will go down. People are saying money. Which money? Which money? Because they are covering you. Regina will come out by Odogu. You are making it to feel like feel funky. When you are going for election, how much did Regina give to you?
50K.
How much did Regina give to you? $50,000.
$50,000.
That's what the Govt that gave to you to support the election. Then the people are saying that is it child? And the one that I supported you with. All my resources right inside your election. You are mad. Because people are saying no because of the gold digger. What digger? Because I cover your shame. Go and see Ned Nwoko students if they are looking like billionaire students. Have you not seen it?
Mom, we have seen it too.
Please, ma, we are begging you, please. Please, ma. Please, ma.
Now doing something.
Calm down. Did anything happen to my sister? In this house. In this house. It's okay. In Ned Nwoko's house.
No.
In Ned Nwoko's house, I am nothing. But in my house, I am free.
No, you're still as valuable. Mom, look at me. Look at me, Mom.
Baby, once again, I cannot stand the violence. It's too much. It's too much.
Don't go give water now. Don't go give water. Just relax.
I beg, give her water, Daria.
Just wait.
I actually want something.
Just relax.
Wait. Shame on you.
Are you bringing out a gun?
Hey, can you imagine? Wait. Can you imagine this?
We are begging you, please.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Fellow contestants in the last concluded presidential election in Nigeria and Anambra State, former Governor Peter Obi has said that the current president of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu-led government lacks the passion to stop the unwarranted killing of people in manners of criminal acts including terrorism, stressing that, while the insecurity did not start with the present government, what is most unfortunate is the lack and absence of competence, commitment, prudent use of resources, patriotism and passion on the part of APC-led government leaders to effectively govern, galvanize and lead Nigeria where no one is unwarrantedly oppressed and killed, a nation where peace, truth and justice reign. This, Peter Obi stated via his social media accounts on Monday evening in response to the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump announced plans to launch U.S. military action in Nigeria to wipe out terrorists killing Christians in the West Africa country. According to Peter Obi, the recent pronouncement by the U.S. government declaring Nigeria a country of particular concern, CPC, and indicating possible military action should give every well-meaning Nigerian serious concern. There is no doubt that Nigeria is experiencing an unprecedented level of insecurity with attendant carnage and the most shocking loss of lives and property. According to Amnesty International, over 10,000 people have been killed in Nigeria since May 2023, and as I have repeatedly lamented, the unwarranted and unprovoked killing of Nigerians is most condemnable, and all efforts must be made to bring it to a stop. It is equally important to state that the terrible situation is significantly avoidable with competent leadership and governance. While the insecurity did not start with the present government, what is most unfortunate is the lack and absence of competence, commitment, prudent use of resources, patriotism and passion on the part of APC-led government leaders to effectively govern, galvanize and lead Nigeria where no one is unwarrantedly oppressed and killed, a nation where peace, truth and justice reign. As democracies, Nigeria and the US have long been strategic partners committed to regional peace and security. That relationship should not falter. The present situation calls for constructive diplomatic and any other plausible engagement by both nations aimed at addressing the prevailing and disturbing security concerns. Both countries must work in concert and expeditiously towards that purpose. Peter Obi had earlier on October 28, 2025 condemned the Nigeria government over rising criminal acts in drug abuse-related crimes, saying, "When criminals can now use the country logistics companies to distribute narcotics across the country, it shows how weak the government institutions in Nigeria have become." The recent revelation that drug traffickers have infiltrated Nigeria's courier and delivery services sector is worrisome and another sad reminder of how deep our national decay has become. When criminal networks can now use logistics companies to distribute narcotics across the country, it shows how weak our institutions and relevant monitoring systems are. The Nigeria Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has repeatedly raised concern about this trend, yet it continues to grow, apparently aided by corruption and poor regulation that have turned the enforcement body into a joke. Drug trafficking remains a big danger to society and a serious international offense that cannot be overlooked. It destroys families, fuels crime, and corrodes the conscience of a nation. A country already battling insecurity, large youth unemployment, and hunger cannot afford a drug-normalized culture. Nigeria, therefore, needs stronger oversight and must rise above this dangerous decline and rebuild a system where laws are sacred, leaders are accountable, and no one is above justice. Nigeria will only heal when character, truth, and responsibility return to governance.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Barrister Jefferson Uwoghiren, a human rights lawyer and a political activist, has said, "Nothing wrong if it takes the intervention of the United States, U.S. President Donald Trump to end the raging fires of insecurity, institutional wickedness and terrorism in Nigeria." The legal practitioner stated this in numbers of posts he published through his personal social media platform since President Donald Trump announced U.S. intention to launch military action in Nigeria to wipe out terrorists killing Christians in the West Africa country, saying, "If America's saber-rattling military threat is the dirty water needed to flush this country clean, or quench the raging fires of institutional wickedness, insecurity, and terrorism, so be it." According to Barrister Jefferson Uwoghiren, dirty water they quench fire. Nobody, yes nobody deserves to die in the hands of terrorists. If it takes Trump's intervention to wake up disgraceful governments to act swiftly, vigorously, patriotically, and responsibly, so be it. The primary business of government is the safety and protection of the lives and properties of citizens, whether Christians or Muslims. If America's saber-rattling is the dirty water needed to flush this country clean, or quench the raging fires of institutional wickedness, insecurity, and terrorism, so be it. Now government way serious, citizens day loyal for, a country of concern to disgraced country. How did we get here? This is the lowest of lows in Nigeria-America relations. A country we ditched the UK for and adopted its system of government. Practically everything. This is not really about Trump. It's more about how we treat crime, punishment, and our bogus criminal justice system. The government has surrounded itself with fawning nincompoop and incompetent advisors who see national security only through narrow tribal prisms and ritualism, adept at creating enemies for the government instead of friends. No attempt at conciliative politics or national unity. Almost 3 years. There are no ambassadors to major countries. Our foreign policy chiefs are torn between transactional politics of financial safe havens or alignment with non-aligned low-energy Caribbean countries. Our domestic policy leans more towards appeasement of fading potentates rather than the enforcement of nation-building rules. We can't continue this way. Either we sit down and talk, or others will do the talking to us. A collapsed or exploding Nigeria is a threat to global peace and a humongous humanitarian disaster that must be avoided at all cost. We are almost at the gate. Where's the break? We had reported that Ogun's state-born princess, Olatunji Munir has reacted over the description of Nigeria as a disgraced country by President Donald Trump of the United States, US, saying, "The greatest contribution the United States and its allies can make at this pivotal moment is to support the genuine democratic emergence of visionary, credible, and people-centered Nigerian leaders, not the preservation of a kleptocratic status quo that has entrenched poverty, division and despair, calling on the international community for the urgent need to uphold democracy and human dignity amid President Trump's plans to begin U.S. military actions in Nigeria to end the killing of Christians in Nigeria. We had also reported that President Donald Trump of the United States of America has placed U.S. soldiers on red alert for possible war in Nigeria. According to President Trump, the U.S. Department of War should prepare U.S. troops for possible military action in Nigeria if the Nigerian government continued to allow the killing of Christians. The U.S. troops may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns a-blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible atrocities. This, President Trump issued on Saturday evening in line with Greenwich Meridian time after President Bola Ahmed Tinubu personally signed a statement rejecting Trump's earlier claim on Friday that Christians are being targeted and killed in Nigeria. Although President Bola Ahmed Tinubu disagreed with Trump, who had described the high level of insecurity in Nigeria as a religious war by Islamic terrorists against Christians, but some Nigerians quickly took to the comments section of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu post on X social media platform, and pasted a screenshot of a tweet published by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on January 29, 2014, wherein President Bola Ahmed Tinubu apparently had long accepted and agreed that the insecurity in Nigeria is possibly a religious war against Christians in the West Africa country. Verbatim, in the tweet, Tinubu said, "The slaughtering of Christian worshippers is strongly condemnable. It calls to question the competence of Jonathan, then President of Nigeria, to protect Nigerians." This old statement by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu indicated that President Donald Trump of the United States of America may not be the first person to describe the insecurity in Nigeria as a religious war against Christian communities in the West Africa country.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Lagos State Command of the Nigeria Police Force has declared the founder and publisher of Sahara Reporters News Media, Omiyele Sowore, wanted for organizing protest in Lagos State, which, the Lagos State Commissioner of Police, Moshood Jimoh, said Sowore has allegedly committed the offense of breach of public peace, and the police commissioner thereafter confirmed the arrest of 13 persons he described as vagabonds and miscreants as group of people came out on Monday morning to protest against the demolition of their settlements after their houses at the Koka and Ojulari areas of a Warrenshoki community in Kasofe local government area of Lagos State were brought down at midnight on Saturday, hours after the state government announced that it had compensated about 80 property owners on Friday, forcing some concerned citizens to condemn the government for displacing families without a clear plan for relocation and reintegration into the housing system. This, Omiyele Sowore, in an on-the-spot video statement made on Monday at the scene of the protest, said he could not come down from the vehicle because he had a privileged information that there was plans to kill him if he comes out openly during the protest. According to Sowore, the action of the police explained why President Donald Trump of the United States, U.S. is considering military action in Nigeria because the U.S. president has seen weak leadership and leaders do not mean well for the people. According to the Lagos State Police Commissioner, I hereby, as the Commissioner of Police, Lagos State Police Command, declare Sowore wanted. I declare him wanted for causing disturbance of public peace and an act to commit a felony by planning and putting all the plans in motion to block the third mainland bridge to cause hardship for Lagosians and other Nigerians, more especially visitors, who are transients through this end. We will not allow that. We are closing in on him. Anywhere he is, he should know that we are closing in on him. We learned that he was in a bus and being videoed. Why didn't he come down? He came down in Abuja. He should come down. Wherever he is, he should report himself to the nearest police station. We are going to arrest him, investigate him and prosecute him. The Commissioner of Police said massive deployment of police personnel had been made, not just to the third mainland bridge but also to other parts of the state, where coordinated protests are likely to hold. The police boss stressed that this location is vital to the city's economy and the well-being of commuters. We will not allow any action, peaceful or otherwise, that seeks to block the bridge and disrupt livelihoods. Any attempt to obstruct the third mainland bridge is a direct threat to public safety and national infrastructure. Anyone attempting to disturb public peace will be arrested, investigated and prosecuted. Lagos is the heartbeat of Nigeria's economy, and we cannot afford chaos here. We have arrested 13 suspects, who are vagabonds and miscreants who wanted to cause mayhem in Lagos State. Uwoghiren, in a statement with a video attachment, said, "I recorded this video at the scene of the attack on peaceful protesters by Nigeria Police Force in Lagos during today's Oworonsoki anti-demolition protest, which they handled in the usual despicable and unconscionable manner." The Lagos Police Commissioner, Moshood Jimoh, has reportedly declared me wanted for disturbance of public peace, allegedly as a result of his office's inability to execute a shoot on sight order given by his illegal IGP, Kayode Egbetoken in Oworonsoki today. Despite my repeated attempts to contact Nigeria Police Force Commissioner Jimoh, he has not taken my calls. Nevertheless, I plan to meet with him soon to address his declaration. Revolution now.
Issue report at the nearest police station. I hereby, as the Commissioner of Police, Lagos State Police Command, declare Uwoghiren wanted. I declare him wanted for the act of causing disturbance of public peace and an act to commit serious felony by planning and putting all the plan in motion to obstruct traffic on the Tommy Land Bridge, to cause hardship for Lagosians and other Nigerians, and especially visitors who are transiting through this end. We will not allow this to happen. These are the equipment, and we ensure that we are closing on him. Anywhere he is, he should be aware that we are closing on him. Willard is doing video and he couldn't come down. Let him come down. He came down in Abuja. Why is he afraid to come down in Lagos? He should come down. He should come down. Well, wherever he is, he should report himself to the nearest police station. Because I'm going to arrest him and investigate him and prosecute him. Thank you. We have made 13 arrests of this miscreant and hoodlum because there's no any reason why this protest must take place. The people who are concerned, who are residents of Oworonsoki, have been paid compensation by government for those who deserve, who are entitled rather to the compensation they deserve. And the people have remained in peace and they've been living in peace in the community. But it's coming to Lagos to instigate crisis, to instigate violence will not be tolerated. And I want all Lagosians to still go about their lawful businesses without any fear or apprehension. Let him come down, let him put his leg on ground. He's riding in a vehicle and he's making video that police has covered everywhere and he can't come down. It's the same way police cover everywhere that I came down in Abuja. Let him come down here and you will see the wrath of the law that will equally be enforced on him.
Coming from Oworonsoki, we are in Oworonsoki today and the police are already attacking. But by the time we got there, the police had attacked peaceful protesters whom they demolished their houses in Oworonsoki area of Lagos. And I think they had intelligence that I was approaching the place as you see captured. They were just tear gassing them, and they brought in more reinforcements. All of them were carrying lethal weapons. This is what we're talking about Nigeria at this time. The police that ought to be protecting the citizens of Nigeria are busy chasing after and attacking innocent civilians, people who they don't build houses for, people they do nothing for. They're attacking them, and this is what you just watched live on my timeline now. So we couldn't enter the community. The whole place is barricaded. These are some of the demolitions that they've carried out, and they relate to homes of poor people. This is where the poor people have managed to run after the rich people drove them away from Makoko and other places. We were told that the IGP, the illegal IGP, actually embedded in the police team today people who could shoot and kill me if I showed up, but I still went there regardless. This is intelligence I had. So right now we'll be monitoring events as they're happening, and time permitting, we'll return back to that community. We must fight for these people and ensure that they get what is theirs back. We cannot leave this country in the hands of criminals to keep exploiting the poor. That is what got us into where we are today. That is what led to what America decided could be their intervention, because they've seen weak and terrible leadership in Nigeria. They know that these guys don't mean well for Nigerians, but that doesn't mean that America mean well for Nigerians. They're just taking advantage of the weakness in the leaders. Some of them have
bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Ogun State-born Princess Olatoriro Munir has reacted over the description of Nigeria as a disgraced country by President Donald Trump of the United States, US, saying, "The greatest contribution the United States and its allies can make at this pivotal moment is to support the genuine democratic emergence of visionary, credible, and people-centered Nigerian leaders, not the preservation of a kleptocratic status quo that has entrenched poverty, division and despair," calling on the international community for the urgent need to uphold democracy and human dignity amid President Trump's plans to begin U.S. military actions in Nigeria to end the killing of Christians in Nigeria. While reacting to the recent remarks by President Donald Trump portraying Nigeria as a disgraced country, Princess Olatoriro acknowledged the deep governance challenges confronting Africa's most populous nation, but emphasized that Nigeria's struggle is not one of Christian-targeted conflict, but one of governance, justice, and humanity itself. The greatest contribution the United States and its allies can make at this pivotal moment is to support the genuine democratic emergence of visionary, credible, and people-centered Nigerian leaders, not the preservation of a kleptocratic status quo that has entrenched poverty, division and despair. True partnership must empower integrity and merit, not those who have rigged themselves into power through corruption and coercion. Princess Olatoriro called for global collaboration to restore faith in governance and strengthen democratic institutions, noting that Nigeria's stability and progress are critical not only for its citizens but for Africa and the world at large. Only through principled engagement and unwavering support for democracy can Nigeria's citizens rebuild their nation in peace and dignity, free from the devastation of renewed conflict. I look forward to continued dialogue, progressive cooperation, and a shared vision for humanity, she concluded. We had reported that President Donald Trump of the United States of America has placed U.S. soldiers on red alert for possible war in Nigeria. According to President Trump, the U.S. Department of War should prepare U.S. troops for possible military action in Nigeria if the Nigerian government continued to allow the killing of Christians. The U.S. troops may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns a-blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible atrocities. This, President Trump issued on Saturday evening in line with Greenwich Meridian Time after President Bola Ahmed Tinubu personally signed a statement rejecting Trump's earlier claim on Friday that Christians are being targeted and killed in Nigeria, although President Bola Ahmed Tinubu disagreed with Trump, who had described the high level of insecurity in Nigeria as a religious war by Islamic terrorists against Christians, but some Nigerians quickly took to the comment section of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's post on X social media platform, and pasted a screenshot of a tweet published by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on January 29, 2014, wherein President Bola Ahmed Tinubu apparently had long accepted and agreed that the insecurity in Nigeria is possibly a religious war against Christians in the West Africa country. Verbatim, in the tweet, Tinubu said, "The slaughtering of Christian worshippers is strongly condemnable. It calls to question the competence of Jonathan, then President of Nigeria, to protect Nigerians." This old statement by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu indicated that President Donald Trump of the United States of America may not be the first person to describe the insecurity in Nigeria as a religious war against Christian communities in the West Africa country.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
President Donald Trump of the United States of America has placed U.S. soldiers on red alert for possible war in Nigeria. According to President Trump, the U.S. Department of War should prepare U.S. troops for possible military action in Nigeria if the Nigerian government continued to allow the killing of Christians. The U.S. troops may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns a-blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible atrocities. This, President Trump issued on Saturday evening in line with Greenwich Meridian Time after President Bola Ahmed Tinubu personally signed a statement rejecting Trump's earlier claim on Friday that Christians are being targeted and killed in Nigeria. Although President Bola Ahmed Tinubu disagreed with Trump, who had described the high level of insecurity in Nigeria as a religious war by Islamic terrorists against Christians, but some Nigerians quickly took to the comment section of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu post on X social media platform, and pasted a screenshot of a tweet published by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on January 29, 2014, wherein President Bola Ahmed Tinubu apparently had long accepted and agreed that the insecurity in Nigeria is possibly a religious war against Christians in the West Africa country. Verbatim, in the tweet, Tinubu said, "The slaughtering of Christian worshippers is strongly condemnable. It calls to question the competence of Jonathan, then President of Nigeria, to protect Nigerians." This old statement by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu indicated that President Donald Trump of the United States of America may not be the first person to describe the insecurity in Nigeria as a religious war against Christian communities in the West Africa country. President Trump, in his latest policy statement via his Truth social media platform on Saturday evening, said, and in quotes, that if the Nigerian government continues to allow the killing of Christians, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria, and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns a-blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible atrocities. I am hereby instructing our Department of War to prepare for possible action. If we attack, it will be fast, vicious, and sweet, just like the terrorist thugs attack our cherished Christians. Warning: the Nigerian government better move fast. According to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigeria stands firmly as a democracy governed by constitutional guarantees of religious liberty. Since 2023, our administration has maintained an open and active engagement with Christian and Muslim leaders alike and continues to address security challenges which affect citizens across faiths and regions. The characterization of Nigeria as religiously intolerant does not reflect our national reality, nor does it take into consideration the consistent and sincere efforts of the government to safeguard freedom of religion and beliefs for all Nigerians. Religious freedom and tolerance have been a core tenet of our collective identity and shall always remain so. Nigeria opposes religious persecution and does not encourage it. Nigeria is a country with constitutional guarantees to protect citizens of all faiths. Our administration is committed to working with the United States government and the international community to deepen understanding and cooperation on protection of communities of all faiths. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in a tweet on Friday, had said that the ongoing slaughter of thousands of Christians in Nigeria by radical Islamists and Fulani ethnic militias is both tragic and unacceptable. As President of the United States said, the United States stands ready, willing, and able to act. In a swift reaction, Nigeria presidential spokesperson Bayo Onanuga replied to the tweet and said that, "Dear Secretary Rubio, there is no ongoing slaughter of thousands of Christians in Nigeria. This is a gross exaggeration of the Nigerian situation. What we do have are sporadic attacks on some villages by bandits and terrorists, and the attacks are religiously insensitive. Christians, Muslims, churches and mosques are attacked randomly. What our country requires from America is military support to fight these violent extremists in some states of our country, not designation as a nation of particular concern." Secretary Rubio, Muslim lives matter too. President Donald Trump, in a statement through his Truth social media platform on Friday, had said, "Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. Thousands of Christians are being killed. Radical Islamists are responsible for this mass slaughter. I am hereby making Nigeria a country of particular concern, but that is the least of it. When Christians, or any such group, is slaughtered like is happening in Nigeria, 3,100 versus 4,476 worldwide, something must be done. I am asking Congressman Riley Moore, together with Chairman Tom Cole and the House Appropriations Committee, to immediately look into this matter, and report back to me. The United States cannot stand by while such atrocities are happening in Nigeria, and numerous other countries. We stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Reports on Saturday early morning in the Africa country of Tanzania indicated that thousands of youths in the country have continued mass protest in the Tanzania capital city of Dodoma, also simultaneously in the country former capital city of Dar es Salaam, which remains the country's largest city and its main economic hub, while streets in Mwanza, Mbeya, and Arusha have remained occupied by the aggrieved youths who the major opposition political party, Chadema, claimed have been shot at, and over 700 of them have been killed by security operatives since the violent protest erupted in the country on Wednesday over the 2025 presidential election allegedly marred by corrupt practices. But the Tanzania Foreign Ministry dismissed the claim, saying the Tanzania government is not aware of any death recorded or any of the protesters killed, adding, the government has not used excessive force on the protesters. The United Nations UN Human Rights Office stated on Friday that it has a credible report of at least 10 deaths recorded as a result of killing of protesters by the Tanzania security forces, and information from border communities between Tanzania and Kenya indicated that, on Thursday, October 30th, in the afternoon, chaos broke out at the Namanga border checkpoint as Kenyan and Tanzanian youth threw stones at Tanzanian police, and the police responded with live ammunition and tear gas canisters, leading to a casualty of 2 people shot dead by police and 2 others, including a Kenyan police officer, were seriously injured. While violent protest continued across major cities in Tanzania, President Samia Suluhu Hassan of Chama cha Mapinduzi, CCM political party, was declared winner, and the electoral body announced on Saturday early morning that the president secured a re-election figure of 97.66% of the votes, which represents 31,913,866 ballots. In the October 29, 2025 controversial presidential election boycotted by the country's main opposition political party, Chadema, which the Chadema political party did by not signing the Electoral Code of Conduct after the set deadline, and the Tanzania electoral body subsequently banned the Chadema political party from participating in the general election and all by-elections till 2030, and this is in addition to the disqualifications of challengers like Tundu Lissu of Chadema political party, the main opposition leader who remains detained since April 2025, and other serious challenger, Luhaga Mpina of ACT Wazalendo, was disqualified on technicalities. The final result showed Hassan 97.1 and 66% of the vote, dominating every constituency, the Electoral Commission announced on state television. A quick swearing-in ceremony would take place on Saturday, the state TV said. On Friday there were reports that the Tanzanian president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, left her private residence in Zanzibar in a military chopper, and some local media reported on Saturday morning that her whereabouts had remained unknown. Demonstrations erupted on Wednesday in Dar es Salaam, a city of more than 7 million people, after disputed and chaotic elections that saw the 2 main opposition parties barred from participating. Protests over the disputed Tanzania election entered the 4th day on Saturday, with the protesters defying military deployment. Massive crowds earlier on Thursday gathered at the Dar es Salaam International Airport in Tanzania, apparently to prevent members of the political elites from fleeing the country. It was gathered that, in Dar es Salaam, a 6 p.m. curfew was announced after protesters in neighborhoods such as Kamara and Ubungo set a bus and a gas station on fire. Local media also reported unrest in Magomeni, Kinondoni, and Tandale, while polling stations were vandalized in parts of Arusha and Mbeya. Internet watchdog group NetBlocks confirmed a nationwide internet disruption as the unrest spread. President Hassan is seeking her first full elected term after succeeding John Magufuli, who died in 2021. 16 smaller opposition candidates also appeared on the ballot. Al Jazeera had reported on Friday that Tanzania's main opposition party has claimed that hundreds of people have been killed in protests following this week's disputed elections, while the United Nations says it has credible reports. At least 10 people died. As we speak, the number of deaths in Dar es Salaam is around 350 and there are more than 200 in Mwanza. Chadema party spokesperson, John Kitoka told the AFP news agency on Friday, referring to the commercial capital in northern Tanzania. If we add the figures from other places in the country, we arrive at a total of around 700 deaths. Chadema said its members had toured hospitals across the country to reach the figure. AFP reported it had received a similar toll from a security source. Al Jazeera has been unable to independently verify the number of deaths since elections on Wednesday. However, Tanzania's Foreign Minister, Mahmoud Thabit Kombo, denied that excessive force has been used, telling Al Jazeera the government has no official figures on any protesters killed. Currently no excessive force has been used, Kombo said on Friday, denying opposition reports about hundreds of people killed. I've not seen these 700 anywhere. There's no number until now of any protesters killed. Kombo said there have been pockets of violence and vandalism in various areas against government properties, including offices and vehicles. The national electricity supply utilities have been burned, he added. The opposition's estimated toll contrasted with that of the UN. In a Friday briefing, UN human rights spokesperson, Sif Magango told Geneva reporters that credible sources had indicated at least 10 deaths at the hands of security forces so far. We call on the security forces to refrain from using unnecessary or disproportionate force, including lethal weapons, against protesters, and to make every effort to de-escalate tensions, Magango said in the same briefing. Meanwhile, there are unconfirmed reports that Tanzanian celebrities including Diamond Platinums have fled amid protests in Tanzania, which the reports indicated that the protesters are now targeting celebrities who promoted Samia Suluhu during the electioneering campaign. This, the British government through the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, has advised that Arusha Airport and Kilimanjaro International Airport are closed, and that most international flights to and from Julius Nyerere International Airport in Dar es Salaam have been cancelled due to ongoing political unrest and a strict curfew in Tanzania.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Kingsley Kanunta Kanu, the younger brother to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, in an X-post as reshared by Barrister Jefferson, the coordinating lawyer for the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has given reasons why his elder brother had continued to defend himself on the ground of no case submission, saying, the federal government of Nigeria, who made the accusations and filed the terrorism charges against the Biafra leader, has not been able to pinpoint any aspect of the Nigeria laws that should warrant his brother, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, to enter defense, citing several court rulings that invalidated the federal government accusations against the detained Biafra leader. This, Kingsley Kanunta Kanu stated in reaction to the commentary of Dr. Sam Amadi, published on This Day newspaper, after the detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, on Monday, abandoned his earlier plan to call witnesses in his ongoing trial before the Federal High Court in Abuja. Nnamdi Kanu, who is being prosecuted on 7 counts of terrorism charges brought against him by the federal government, last Friday, had prayed the court for an adjournment after informing the trial judge, Justice James Omotosho, that his former legal team, led by a former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Chief Kanu Agabi, San, had yet to release his case file to him. Though Nnamdi Kanu had earlier expressed his readiness to open his defense in a written application to the court, in which he indicated his intention to call witnesses and requested the issuance of witness summons, but, at the resumed hearing on Monday, Kanu told the court that upon reviewing the case file, he had concluded that there was no valid charge against him. Nnamdi Kanu argued that since he believed the charges were unlawful and that the prosecution had failed to establish any case, there was no need for him to proceed with his defense. According to Punch newspaper, the trial judge, Justice James Omotosho, directed Kanu to file a written address formally stating his position and to serve the prosecution accordingly. Justice Omotosho further advised the IPOB leader to consult experts in criminal law to understand the possible legal implications of his decision. The judge thereafter adjourned the case to November 4, 5, and 6 for the adoption of final written addresses, based either on Kanu's position that no case had been established against him or for him to proceed with his defense if he decides otherwise. Kingsley Kanunta Kanu's statement as recirculated by Barrister Aloy Ejimakor on Thursday, tagged, Legal Rejoinder, to the misleading commentary by Dr. Sam Amadi, published in this day of the 30th of October 2025, titled, If I were Kanu, I would not refuse to write a defense, stated as follows below. 1. Introduction. Correcting a misguided narrative, the recent article by Dr. Sam Amadi in this day at Thisdalev of the 30th of October 2025, suggesting that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu should write a defense instead of claiming he has no case, exemplifies how poorly informed commentary can distort constitutional discourse in Nigeria. While the piece parades itself as legal analysis, it fundamentally misstates the law and facts of Mazi Kanu's case. Kanu is not refusing to defend himself. He is asserting the obvious and unassailable fact that there exists no valid, cognizable charge known to Nigerian law for him to defend. That is not defiance, it is constitutional obedience. 2. The settled matter of rendition, a closed chapter. Contrary to Dr. Amadi's impression, the illegality of Kanu's abduction and extraordinary rendition from Kenya has been conclusively settled. It is not in contention and not on trial. The matter has been determined by the Court of Appeal, Paroludoton Adefope Okagie, JCA, in FRN vs. Kanu, CA, ABJ, CR, 625 2020, which discharged Kanu on the 13th of October 2022 and declared his rendition unlawful. The United Nations Human Rights Council, UNHRC, July 2022, and the UN Special Rapporteur on Counterterrorism and Human Rights, March 2023, both confirming violations of international law. The Federal High Court, which recognized the illegality of the rendition, and the Supreme Court, for Emmanuel Ajim, JSC, who acknowledged that Kanu's abduction was a grave violation of international and domestic law. Therefore, to suggest that Kanu is hiding behind rendition is disingenuous. That issue is res judicata, finally and conclusively determined. 3. The crux of the matter. No charge known to law. Mazi Kanu's insistence that he has no case to answer rests squarely on Section 36(12) of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended. A person shall not be convicted of a criminal offense unless that offense is defined and the penalty therefore is prescribed in a written law. The present charge, FHC, ABJ, CR, 383 2015, is built upon laws that have ceased to exist. Counts 1, 2, 5 and 8 are founded on the Terrorism Prevention Amendment Act 2013, repealed by Section 97 of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022, TPPA 2022. Count 15, now 7, is founded on the Customs and Excise Management Act, CEMA, Cap C45 LFN 2004, repealed by Section 281, 1, of the Nigeria Customs Service Act 2023, and counts 1, 2, 6. Alleging acts in Kenya, have no validation under Section 76, 1, D, Roman Figure 3, TPPA 2022, which mandates that the alleged act must be punishable under Kenyan law and certified by a Kenyan court. These are not technicalities, they're jurisdictional voids. A man cannot be tried for an offense that is not defined by an existing law. To insist otherwise is to drag the judiciary into constitutional heresy. 4. Constitutional supremacy and non-derogable immunity. When the Court of Appeal discharged Kanu on the 13th of October 2022, that discharge triggered the non-derogable constitutional immunity enshrined in Section 36(9). No person who shows that he has been tried by any court of competent jurisdiction for a criminal offense and either convicted or acquitted shall again be tried for that offense or for an offense having the same facts constituting that offense. This immunity is permanent, self-executing, and non-derogable, as confirmed by Sections 1, 3, and 45(1) of the Constitution. No law, court, or executive order can override it. Even in times of national emergency, this right remains untouchable. Thus, the Supreme Court's remittal order of the 15th of December 2023, being inconsistent with Section 36(9), cannot lawfully revive a null charge. Under Section 1, 3, any act inconsistent with the Constitution is void ab initio.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria has issued a revised policy actions over the 2025 presidential pardons he had earlier granted to 175 persons, some of whom were convicted murderers, deadly kidnappers, which included Mariam Sanda, who had spent barely 6 years and 8 months at the Suleja Medium Security Custodial Center after she was convicted and sentenced to death by hanging over the killing of her husband, Bilyaminu Bello in Abuja, who she stabbed 3 times repeatedly. This, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in his earlier presidential pardon granted to the 37-years-old convicted and condemned murderer, Mariam Sanda, had asked her to go home free because of her children, but, following public outcry and condemnation, in the revised version of the presidential pardon signed into law on October 21, 2025 and made available to the public by the presidency on Wednesday, October 29, 2025, President Tinubu commuted the death sentence to 12 years imprisonment, although the presidency never mentioned the total numbers of people granted the presidential pardons, but the list of beneficiaries made available by the presidential spokesperson, Bayo Onanuga, indicated that only 86 persons were granted the presidential pardons, and Mariam Sanda, apparently spelt as Mariam Sanda, was last on the list, and the names of earlier beneficiaries like Kelvin Prosper Oniara were not seen in the revised edition of the list. Maybe the names were omitted due to excessive public outcry that Prosper Kelvin Oniara was a convicted, notorious, high-profile gang leader of a deadly kidnapping group that were widely stated to be responsible for the kidnapping and subsequent killing of a former Anambra State Deputy Governor, Julian Wike, kidnapping of a prominent legal practitioner, Mike Ozekome, on August 24, 2013 along Benin Auchi Road, and during the kidnapping operation, the gunman ambushed and killed 4 police officers, including the divisional police officer, DPO of Ahor Division, who led the police team in an attempt to rescue Mike Ozekome. Outside that, the 44-years-old Oniara was also stated to be responsible for the kidnapping of a judge in the Edo State Judiciary, a top female official of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, among other several members of the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, and security agents. And Oniara was also stated to carry out several armed robberies and kidnap operations in Delta, Edo, Rivers and Anambra states, maintaining operational base and detention camps in Wari and Kokori community in Delta State, Ugbakolo community in Benue State, Benin City in Edo State, and Aba in Abia State. That on the 18th of September 2013, Oniara issued a 60-day ultimatum to the federal government of Nigeria to release some of his boys who were arrested by the Department of State Services, DSS, or he would wreak havoc on innocent Nigerian citizens. And, on the 25th of September 2013, a combined security team of the Nigerian Army and DSS operatives arrested Kelvin Prosper Oniara, a convicted notorious terrorist, kidnap kingpin and armed robber, who had been on the wanted list of the security agencies, and he was subsequently sentenced to 20 years imprisonment, which he had spent 12 years in prison before President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had initially made an attempt to release him. Details of the 3 press releases issued by the presidency in the course of the 2025 presidential pardons that elicited public outcry and rejections are presented verbatim in a descending order of latest to former below. President Tinubu signs Instrument of Clemency and Pardons, moves Secretariat of Prerogative of Mercy Committee to Justice Ministry. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, has executed the relevant instruments of release to complete the process of formally exercising his constitutional power of prerogative of mercy to grant pardon and clemency to specific individuals who were earlier convicted for various offenses. Following consultations with the Council of State and public opinion on the matter, the President directed a further review of the initially approved list for consideration in furtherance of the President's discretionary powers under Section 175, 1 and 2 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended. Consequently, certain persons convicted of serious crimes such as kidnapping, drug-related offenses, human trafficking, fraud, unlawful possession of firearms, arms dealing, etc., were deleted from the list. Others who had been hitherto pardoned in the old list had their sentences commuted. This action became necessary in view of the seriousness and security implications of some of the offenses, the need to be sensitive to the feelings of the victims of the crimes and society in general, the need to boost the morale of law enforcement agencies and adherence to bilateral obligations. The concept of justice as a three-way traffic for the accused, the victim, and the state, society also guided the review. The approved list of eligible beneficiaries has been transmitted to the Nigerian Correctional Service for implementation in line with the duly signed instruments of release. Furthermore, to ensure that future exercises meet public expectations and best practices, the President has directed the immediate relocation of the Secretariat of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Prerogative of Mercy from the Federal Ministry of Special Duties to the Federal Ministry of Justice. President Tinubu also directed the Attorney General of the Federation to issue appropriate guidelines for the exercise of the power of prerogative of mercy, which includes compulsory consultation with relevant prosecuting agencies. This will ensure that only persons who fully meet the stipulated legal and procedural requirements will henceforth benefit from the issuance of instruments of release. The President appreciated the constructive feedback and engagement from stakeholders and the general public on this matter. President Tinubu also reaffirmed his administration's broader commitment to judicial reforms and improving the administration of justice in Nigeria. Signed, Bayo Onanuga, Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy on October 29, 2025. Presidential Prerogative of Mercy exercise at review stage, not final, AGF Fagbemi. The Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice wishes to clarify that no inmate approved for clemency under the recent exercise of the President's power of prerogative of mercy has been released from custody. The process remains at the final administrative stage, which includes a standard review to ensure that all names and recommendations fully comply with established legal and procedural requirements before any instrument of release is issued. It is important to note that the last stage of the exercise, after approval by the Council of State, is the issuance of the instrument for the implementation of the decision concerning each beneficiary. This stage affords an opportunity for a final look at the list for remedial purposes, if any, before the instrument is forwarded to the Controller General of Corrections for necessary action. This verification process is part of the standard protocol and reflects the government's commitment to transparency and due diligence. The Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice appreciates the public's vigilance and constructive feedback, which continue to strengthen institutional integrity. Public engagement is always welcome, as it demonstrates that Nigerians care deeply about justice and good governance. There is no delay in the process. It is simply following the law to the letter to ensure that only those duly qualified benefit from the President's mercy. As soon as all legal and procedural checks are concluded, the public will be duly informed. The rule of law does not rush. It ensures fairness. Signed, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice on October 16, 2025. Details of the presidential pardon and clemency. Illegal minors, white-collar convicts, remorseful drug offenders, foreigners, Major General Maman Vatsa, Major Akubo, Professor Magaji Garba, capital offenders such as Mariam Sanda, Ken Saro-Wiwa, and the other Ogoni 8 were among the 175 convicts and former convicts who received President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's mercy on Thursday. Nweke Francis Chibus, aged 44, serving a life sentence at Kirikiri for cocaine. Dr. Nwogu Peters, aged 67, serving a 17-year jail term for fraud. Sentenced in 2013, Mrs. Anastasia Daniel Nwaba, aged 63, already served a sentence for fraud. Barrister Hussaini Al-Haji Umar, aged 58, sentenced in 2023 to pay a fine of 150 million nairas in the ICPC case. Ayla Sadu Alanamu, aged 63, was sentenced to 7 years for bribery in 2019 and has served the sentence. Honorable Farouk M. Lawan, aged 62, sentenced to 5 years in 2021 for corrupt practices and had served the sentence. President Tinubu granted clemency to most of them based on the reports that the convicts had shown remorse and good conduct. He forgave some due to old age, the acquisition of new vocational skills, or enrollment in the National Open University of Nigeria, (NOUN). President Tinubu also corrected the historic injustice committed by British colonialists against Sir Herbert Macaulay, one of Nigeria's foremost nationalists. In all, the Presidential Advisory Committee on the Prerogative of Mercy, chaired by the Attorney General and Justice Minister, Prince Lateef Olusunkanmi Fagbemi, recommended pardon for 2 inmates, 15 former convicts, 11 of whom have died. The committee recommended clemency for 82 inmates and commutation of sentences for 65 inmates. 7 inmates on death row also benefited from the presidential reprieve. The committee recommended that the president should commute the death sentences to life imprisonment. Prince Fagbemi presented the committee's report at the Council of State meeting, chaired by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Full list of beneficiaries of President Tinubu's mercy. Pardoned. Posthumous pardon. Sir Herbert Macaulay was banned from public office for misappropriation of funds and sentenced in 1913 by the British colonialists. Ken Saro-Wiwa, sentenced for murder. Saturday Dobi, sentenced for murder. Nordu Iwa, sentenced for murder. Daniel Buko, sentenced for murder. Paul Levera, sentenced for murder. Felix Nuate, sentenced for murder. Barabor Bera, sentenced for murder. Barinam Kiobel, sentenced for murder. John Queen, sentenced for murder. Major General Maman Giavatsa, age 46, sentenced in 1986 for treason, related to an alleged coup plot. Posthumous pardon, and honors, the Ogoni 9, victims of Ogoni 9 honored. Chief Albert Badi, Chief Edward Kobaru, Chief Samuel Oraj, Chief Theophilus Oraj. Presidential clemency. Most of the beneficiaries showed either remorse or learned vocational skills in jail. Ben Friday, aged 60, was sentenced to 3 years or 1.3 million nairas fine for marijuana in 2023. Aluagwu Lawrence, aged 47, sentenced for Indian hemp selling, 2015. Orok Michael Chibus, aged 21, sentenced to 5 years, cannabis sativa, in 2023. Kelvin Christopher Smith, aged 42, was sentenced to 4 years for importing cocaine in 2023. Azabuki Jeremiah Emeka, aged 31, sentenced in 2021 to 5 years or 3 million nairas fine for importing cocaine. Akinrene Akinwande Adabi, aged 47, sentenced in 2023 to 3 years for dealing in tramadol. Ahmed Adeyemo, aged 38, sentenced to 15 years for cannabis. Already served 9 years, 5 months at Kirikiri. Adeniyi Jimo, aged 31 years, sentenced to 15 years for drugs in 2015 and served 9 years at Kirikiri. Sian Omarind, aged 39, sentenced to 15 years for drugs in 2015. Served 9 years at Kirikiri. Adesanya Olafemi Paul, aged 61, sentenced to 14 years for theft. Had served 8 years. If Yusuf, aged 37, was sentenced for human trafficking in 2019. Had served 6 years at Kirikiri. Daniel Bodenwa, aged 43, was sentenced in 2018 to 10 years for fraudulent intent to forge a land receipt. Had served 6 years in jail. Fidelis Michael, aged 40, sentenced to 5 years for cannabis sativa. Suru Akande, aged 52, sentenced to 5 years for cannabis sativa. Sofianu Umar, aged 56, sentenced to 5 years without the option of a fine for possessing 5 kilograms of cannabis sativa, 2023. Dahiru Abdullahi, aged 46, was sentenced in 2016 to 21 years for possession of 3 pistols and had spent 10 years in jail. Hamza Abu Bakr, aged 37, sentenced to 5 years for Indian hemp selling, 2022. Rabiu Al-Hassan Dawaki, aged 52, sentenced in 2020 to 7 years for criminal breach of trust. Mujabu Muhammad, aged 30, sentenced in 2022 to 5 years, no option for a fine for cannabis. Emmanuel Ez, aged 49, sentenced in 2022 to 5 years for heroin. Bala Azika Yahya, aged 70, sentenced in 2017 to 15 years for cannabis. Lena Kusum Wilson, aged 34, sentenced to death in 2017 for culpable homicide, had spent 8 years in jail. Buhari Sani, aged 33, sentenced in 2022 to 5 years for possession of 558 grams of cannabis. Muhammad Musa, aged 27, was sentenced in 2022 to 5 years for possession of 16 grams of cannabis. Maharazu Abu Bakr, aged 37, sentenced in 2022 to 5 years for selling Indian hemp. Already spent 3 years in Katsina prison. Ibrahim Yusuf, aged 34, jailed 5 years in 2022 for possession of 5.7 grams of Indian hemp. Saad Ahmed Madaki, aged 72, sentenced in 2020 for a 419 offense. Had served 4 years in Kaduna prison. Ex-Corporal Michael Bawa, aged 72, sentenced to life imprisonment for murder in 2005. Had spent 20 years in Kaduna prison. Richard Ayuba, aged 38, sentenced to 5 years in 2022 for Indian hemp. Adam Abu Bakr, aged 30 and sentenced in 2022 to 5 years for possession of 2 kilograms of tramadol. Emmanuel Yusuf, aged 34, sentenced in 2022 to 4 years for possession of 2 kilograms of tramadol. Edwin Nazor, aged 60, sentenced in 2018 to 15 years for cannabis. Had spent 6 years, 9 months at Zamfara prison. Chinedu Stanley, aged 34, sentenced in 2023 to 3 years for fake lubricant oil. Joseph Nwoko, aged 42, sentenced in 2022 to 5 years for drugs. Johnny N.T. Heru, aged 63, sentenced in 1989 to life imprisonment for robbery. Had spent 36 years in Umuahia prison. John Omotie, aged 28, sentenced to 6 years for pipeline vandalism. Enzikitede Harry, aged 37, sentenced in 2023 to 5 years for illegal possession of Indian hemp, cocaine, and heroin. Jonathan Asuko, aged 28, sentenced in 2022 to 5 years for possession of Indian hemp and other drugs. Prince Samuel Peters, aged 54, sentenced in 2020 to 7 years for obtaining money by false pretense. Had spent 4 years, 3 months in Iketekpene prison. Babangida Saliu, aged 35, sentenced in 2024 to 3 years for unlawful mining. Adamu Sani, aged 39, sentenced in 2024 to 3 years for unlawful mining. Abdulkarem Salisu, aged 30, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining. Abdulaziz Lawal, aged 18, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining. Abdul Rahman Babangida, aged 20, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining. Maharazu Aladu, aged 22, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining. Zahareddin Balue, aged 38, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining. Babangida Usman, aged 30, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining. Zayanu Abdullahi, aged 28, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining, 2024. Bashir Garuba, aged 20, sentenced in 2024 to 3 years for unlawful mining. Imam Suleiman, aged 25, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining, 2024. Abba Amisu, aged 28, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining, 2024. Lawani Lowanu, aged 20, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining, 2024. Yusuf Al-Hassan, aged 33, was sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining in 2024. Abdullahi Isa, aged 25, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining, 2024. Zayanu Bello, aged 35, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining. Habib Suleiman, aged 22, sentenced in 2024 to 3 years for unlawful mining. Jubran Sahabi, aged 23, was sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Shfiu Umar, aged 28, was sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Saidu Abu Bakr, aged 29, sentenced in 2024 to 3 years for unlawful mining. Haruna Abu Bakr, aged 24, was sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Rabiu Saidu, aged 26, sentenced in 2024 to 3 years for unlawful mining. Maha Kuru, aged 25, sentenced in 2024 to 3 years for unlawful mining. Zaredin Aminu, aged 25 years, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining. Nazipi Musa, aged 25, sentenced to 3 years for unlawful mining in 2024. Abdullahi Musa, aged 30 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Habibu Safiu, aged 20 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Hassani Sani, aged 21 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Musa Lawali, aged 25 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Suleiman Lawal, aged 23 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Yusuf Ilyasu, aged 21 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Sebiu Aliyu, aged 20 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Holaru Sani, aged 18 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Shitu Aliyu, aged 30 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Sanusi Aminu, aged 27 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Isiaka Adamu, aged 40 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Maman Ibrahim, aged 50 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Shwaibu Abdullahi, aged 35 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Sanusi Adamu, aged 28 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Sadi Musa, aged 20 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Haruna Isa, aged 35 and sentenced to 3 years in 2024 for unlawful mining. Note: Senator Ikra Aliyu Bilbas signed an undertaking to be responsible for the rehabilitation and empowerment of all the convicted illegal miners granted presidential clemency. Abiodun Elamero, aged 43, sentenced to life imprisonment for cocaine hawking in 2014, had spent 10 years plus in Kirikiri. Mariam Sanda, aged 37, was sentenced to death in 2020 for culpable homicide and had spent 6 years, 8 months at Suleja Medium Security Custodial Center. Her family pleaded for her release, arguing that it was in the best interest of her 2 children. The plea was also anchored on her good conduct in jail, her remorse, and her embracement of a new lifestyle, demonstrating her commitment to being a model prisoner. List of inmates on death row reduced to life imprisonment. Emmanuel Barber, aged 38, sentenced to death in 2017 for culpable homicide. On death row in Kuje Custodial Center for the past 8 years. The sentence was commuted to life imprisonment based on good conduct and remorsefulness. Emmanuel Gladstone, aged 45, was sentenced in 2020 to death for murder and had spent 5 years at Katsina Custodial Center. Death sentence commuted to life imprisonment due to good conduct and remorse. Moses Ayodele Olorunfemi, aged 51, sentenced to death in 2012 for culpable homicide and had spent 13 years on death row in Katsina. President Tinubu commuted the death sentence to life imprisonment, citing the individual's good conduct and remorse. Abu Bakar Usman, aged 59, sentenced to death in 2014 and had spent 14 years on death row in Katsina. His sentence was commuted to life because of his remorse and good conduct. Khalifa Umar, aged 37, sentenced to death in 2014 and had spent 11 years on death row in Kano Custodial Center. His sentence has been commuted to life imprisonment. Benjamin Ekeze, age 40, sentenced to death in 2017 for armed robbery and conspiracy, and had spent 12 years on death row at Kirikiri, Lagos. The sentence was also commuted to life. Muhammad Umar, 43, sentenced to death in 2018 for culpable homicide and had spent 7 years on death row in Onitsha Custodial Center. He got the presidential reprieve, commuting the death sentence to life imprisonment. List of inmates recommended for reduced term of imprisonment. Yusuf Owolabi, aged 36, sentenced to life in 2015 for manslaughter, had spent 10 years at Kirikiri. Prison term reduced to 12 years for showing remorse and learning vocational skills. Afenyi Ez, aged 33, sentenced to life in 2021 for manslaughter and had spent 4 years at Kirikiri. Prison term reduced to 12 years for showing remorse and learning vocational skills. Malam Ibrahim Suleiman, aged 59, sentenced to life in 2022 for armed robbery and possession of illegal firearms. Sentence cut to 10 years based on good conduct. Shatima Maji Arfo, aged 54, sentenced in 2021 to 7 years for corrupt practices. Sentence reduced to 4 years, because of good conduct and ill health. Ajaspa Benziga, aged 69 and sentenced in 2015 to 20 years for culpable homicide. Sentence reduced to 12 years, based on old age and ill health. Ifena Kenekuku, aged 42, sentenced in 2015 to 20 years for drugs, cocaine import, and had spent close to 10 years in Kirikiri. Prison term reduced to 12 years based on remorse and the acquisition of vocational skills. MG Bike Matthew, aged 45, sentenced to 20 years in 2013 for the import of 3.10 kilograms. Following remorsefulness and the acquisition of vocational skills at Kirikiri. Sentence reduced to 12 years. Patrick Mensah, aged 40, sentenced in 2015 to 17 years for drugs. Sentence reduced to 11 years. Obi Edwin Chukwu, aged 43 and sentenced in 2017 to 15 years for drugs. Sentence reduced to 10 years. Tunde Balogun, aged 32 and sentenced in 2015 to 15 years for drugs. Sentence reduced to 10 years. Lima Pereira Eric Diego, aged 27 and sentenced in 2017 to 15 years or a fine of 20 million nairas for drugs. Sentence reduced to 10 years. Uchegbu Emeka Michael, aged 37, sentenced. Human rights lawyer, Barrister Jefferson Uwoghiren has condemned and berated the federal government of Nigeria under the presidency of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for arresting, detaining and remanding to Kuje prison, Barrister Oloyejimako, the lawyer to the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, after Aloy Ejimakor was seen joining the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest in Abuja on Monday, according to the human rights lawyer who have remarkable experience in fighting against police extrajudicial killing. One notable exception is that a lawyer enjoys less freedom than others to speak publicly about his or her own cases, but not when it involves solidarity marches and protests for his client. The conducts of lawyers and the limit of their professional duties is the kernel of the alarming accusation by the presidency yesterday against the lawyer of Mr. Nnamdi Kanu and his subsequent arrest by the police for his presence at a scene in Abuja, where protesters were marching peacefully demanding the release of Mr. Kanu. The statement from the presidency and the police action is obviously a culmination of undisguised hostility towards the lawyer for having the temerity to represent a person the government have since prosecuted and convicted in the court of public opinions. Ordinarily, a lawyer's bail application for alleged crime of illegal protest won't be refused. The refusal is concerning and turning a simple matter into a political case of vendetta and persecution. Bayo Onanuga, the special advisor to the president on information and strategy, had on Monday tweeted while the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest was ongoing, that, "I spotted Aloy Ejimakor, one of Nnamdi Kanu's lawyers, among the small group of protesters mobilized in Abuja by Omiyele Sowore. I wonder what Mr. Ejimakor was thinking when he decided to join this shambolic protest. As a lawyer, he should be aware of the principle of sub judice, particularly in relation to the ongoing treason case before the court. The prosecution has concluded its case, and it is now incumbent upon Mr. Ejimakor and the other lawyers to mount a strong defense for Kanu, rather than focusing on preparing a strong case. Mr. Ejimakor has resorted to extra-legal tactics, joining a career anarchist, to influence the process." Meanwhile, few hours ago, the organizer of the protest and the founder of Sahara Reporters News Media, Omiyele Sowore, stated via his social media accounts that, "We have been informed that plans are allegedly in place at Kuje prison to harm Nnamdi Kanu's younger brother, Fineboy, and Aloy Ejimakor, his special counsel, inside Kuje prison by special warders assigned by the Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu." Bayo Onanuga in the tweet demanded a snaction against Barrister Aloy Ejimakor for joining the protest, calling for the release of his client, Nnamdi Kanu. Accordingly, Bayo Onanuga said, "I spotted Aloy Ejimakor, one of Nnamdi Kanu's lawyers, among the small group of protesters mobilized in Abuja by Omiyele Sowore. I wonder what Mr. Ejimakor was thinking when he decided to join this shambolic protest. As a lawyer, he should be aware of the principle of sub judice, particularly in relation to the ongoing treason case before the court. The prosecution has concluded its case, and it is now incumbent upon Mr. Ejimakor and the other lawyers to mount a strong defense for Kanu. Rather than focusing on preparing a strong case, Mr. Ejimakor has resorted to extra-legal tactics, joining a career anarchist, to influence the process. Ejimakor's action questions his adherence to professional ethics. Legal authorities should consider appropriate sanctions for the unethical conduct of the bearded lawyer." Reacting, Barrister Jefferson Uwoghiren, in a statement signed and made available on Tuesday, said, "Lawyers generally enjoy constitutional protection for two kinds of speech. Like everyone else, though with at least two important exceptions, lawyers can criticize government, including the courts and judges, and speak about public issues, subject to such narrow limitations professional rules of practice will permit. One notable exception is that a lawyer enjoys less freedom than others to speak publicly about his or her own cases. But not when it involves solidarity marches and protests for his client. The conducts of lawyers and the limit of their professional duties is the kernel of the alarming accusation by the presidency yesterday against the lawyer of Mr. Nnamdi Kanu and his subsequent arrest by the police for his presence at a scene in Abuja, where protesters were marching peacefully demanding the release of Mr. Kanu. The statement from the presidency and the police action is obviously a culmination of undisguised hostility towards the lawyer for having the temerity to represent a person the government have since prosecuted and convicted in the court of public opinions. This is a deeply concerning assault on our adversarial legal system and the rights to legal representations. No matter the severity of the allegations or the repugnancy of the case, an accused person remains innocent until the courts rule otherwise. Any lawyer who knows his onions on his suya knows that there's no good or bad case, until the final determination of the case. Thus, the first great duty of an advocate or lawyer is to reckon or do everything legally possible in the interests of his client. In the discharge of his professional duties, a lawyer knows but one person in the whole of the world, and that person is his client, even if it requires encouraging protests or protesters who are in sympathy with his client's interests or speaking to the press to clarify the allegations against his client. This is similar in reality and desperation in capital offense cases, when government determinedly provide the judge, prosecutor, and free turncoat indolent defense counsels for accused persons, the government is determined to waste. A trinity of conspiracy and collusion against indigent and poor citizens. Tobeo Onanuga and other moral, ethics schizophrenics, a lawyer's representation of a client, including representation by appointment, does not constitute an endorsement of his client's political, economic, social, or moral views. Arresting lawyers or making moral judgments about lawyers because of the identity of their clients will inevitably impede access to justice and the availability of lawyers for political dissents in the coming days, Barrister Jefferson Uwoghiren stated. The remanded Nnamdi Kanu lawyer, Aloy Ejimako, in a tweet on Tuesday, said, "I am safe and sound but still under custody at Kuje prison." The magistrate refused to listen to our submissions. He insisted on remanding us till Friday and got his way. For context, keep in mind that they bypassed several magistrate courts in town and headed to this one in Kuje. On Monday, Aloy Ejimako had tweeted that, "We've just been arrested. Myself, Prince Emmanuel and others. We are at FCT Command SID. Myself, Fineboy and others. Number 1 Zaria Street, Gariki 2, Abuja." Earlier on Monday, Ejimako also tweeted that, "I'm in front of Transcorp Hilton with a mammoth crowd that gathered for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu October 20th and the police just exploded tear gas. My eyes and throat hurt. They're scattering everywhere." Omiyele Sowore on Tuesday stated that, "I just learned that illegal IGP Kayode Egbetoken has sent Nnamdi Kanu's brother and lawyer, Aloy Ejimako, and 11 others all the way to Kuje Magistrate Court to get them remanded in prison at all costs." Earlier on Monday, Omiyele Sowore said, "The despicable and illegal Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetoken, has ordered the arrest and detention of 13 peaceful protesters who participated in today's Free Nnamdi Kanu demonstration in Abuja. Among those detained are Nnamdi Kanu's lead lawyer, Aloy Ejimako, Nnamdi Kanu's brother, Fineboy Kanu, Barrister Ekere, and 10 others whose only crime was exercising their constitutional right to peaceful protest." Shockingly, the protesters have been taken to the notorious SARS abattoir detention and torture facility in Abuja, a place long associated with human rights abuses, unlawful detentions, and unspeakable cruelty. Their only offense was standing for justice and freedom and protesting peacefully. In another post on Monday, Omiyele Sowore said, "We relocated to the FCT Police Command today to ensure the unconditional release of Nnamdi Kanu's brother, Fineboy, his lawyer, Barrister Aloy Ejimako, and 11 others who were arrested and tortured for participating in Free Nnamdi Kanu peaceful protest. While we were there, we commenced another phase of our protest, and the police responded by attacking us right in front of the command. We were informed that the illegal Inspector General of Police Kayode Egbetoken requested that they be interviewed and possibly detained. This will not stand." On Tuesday evening, Omiyele Sowore stated in a statement that lawyers representing Barrister Aloy Ejimako and his brother, Emmanuel Fineboy Kanu, filed a bail application today at the Federal High Court in Abuja following their unlawful arrest during the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest. However, in a blatant display of bad faith, police prosecutors reportedly refused to accept service of the court summons delivered by court bailiffs, an intentional move to frustrate and delay the bail process. Today, we also found out they were so desperate that they thought, Aloy, for Aliyu. Today, we proceeded to the Kuje Magistrate Court, where the Nigeria Police Force under the leadership of illegal IGP Kayode Egbetoken, hastily arraigned Nnamdi Kanu's lead counsel, Aloy Ejimakor, his brother, Fineboy, and 11 others. However, the magistrate had already remanded them in Kuje prison until Friday, before their attorneys arrived at the magistrate's court.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Nigeria Police Force, NPF, under the leadership of the Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Egbetoken, who is currently in the United States, US, attending the International Association of Chiefs of Police, IACP annual conference in Denver, Colorado, USA, alongside other senior police officers, has warned troublemakers to resist the temptation of hijacking the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest slated to hold today across the West Africa country by the organizers and other group of Nigerians to demand the release of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Also, the NPF reminded the organizers and the protesters to respect the federal High Court order that restricted them from staging the protest in certain areas in Abuja, such areas which included Aso Rock Villa and its environs, the National Assembly Complex, Force Headquarters, the Court of Appeal, Eagle Square and Shehu Shagari Way, while assuring the protesters of protection. The NPF, in a statement issued and made available by the Force spokesperson, Benjamin Hundean, indicated that the Nigeria Police Force reaffirms its unwavering commitment to upholding the rule of law and maintaining public peace in accordance with constitutional provisions. This follows the subsisting order of the Federal High Court, Abuja Division, given on the 17th of October 2025, by Honorable Justice M.G. Umar, in suit number FHC, ABJ, CS, 2202-2025, Federal Republic of Nigeria vs. Omoyele Sowore and 4 others. The order restrains the respondents and any other persons or groups acting under their instruction from staging protests within and around Aso Rock Villa and its environs, the National Assembly Complex, Force Headquarters, the Court of Appeal, Eagle Square and Shehu Shagari Way. In deference to the authority of the court and in line with the constitutional mandate of the police to enforce law and order, the force hereby calls on all groups, whether in support of or opposed to the ongoing agitation for the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, to adhere strictly to the provisions of the court order. The directive remains binding and enforceable pending further judicial proceedings. The Nigeria Police Force recognizes and respects the rights of citizens to peaceful assembly and expression. However, such rights must be exercised responsibly and within the limits of the law, particularly where public safety, national security, and the rights of other citizens are concerned. The court's intervention is therefore a safeguard, not a suppression, of constitutional freedoms. Accordingly, all intending protesters and counter-protest groups are strongly advised to avoid restricted areas and to refrain from any act capable of provoking confrontation or disturbing public order. The force will ensure the free flow of traffic, protection of lives and property, and security of all law-abiding citizens. Any person or group that uses protests as cover to incite violence, carry or use offensive weapons, vandalize public or private property, kidnap, or engage in acts likely to cause loss of life or serious injury will be dealt with decisively. Offenders will be arrested, subjected to full investigation, and prosecuted under relevant criminal laws, including laws relating to public order, violent conduct and terrorism where applicable. Those who incite others via social media or other platforms should note that digital evidence will be used in investigations and prosecutions. The Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Adeolu Egbetoken, has directed the FCT Commissioner of Police and relevant operational commands to ensure strict enforcement of the court's order, maintain visible and strategic deployments across vulnerable locations, and ensure the safety of residents and lawful activities in the FCT. All organizers and participants are therefore advised to avoid the restricted areas specified by the court. refrain from carrying weapons, engaging in provocative conduct, or encouraging others to breach the law, and channel grievances through the courts and other lawful avenues rather than the streets. The Nigeria Police Force assures law-abiding Nigerians that adequate security arrangements have been made to protect lives and property. Non-participants should go about their lawful businesses without fear. Anyone found to be in breach of the court's order or in contempt of the law will be arrested and prosecuted. We have reported that the founder of Sahara Reporters News Media and the organizer of the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest, Omiyele Sowore, has refuted and debunked the reports circulating in some sections of the media that the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has stopped the upcoming Monday, October 20th mass protest organized to demand the release of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, saying, "The media report is false and a calculated attempt to distract members of the public from coming out to join the protest," adding, "Nnamdi Kanu is so sick that the people must come out now to set him free." The sickness, as alleged by Omiyele Sowore, apparently challenged the medical report issued by the Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, who had submitted its panel report before the trial court on Thursday that Nnamdi Kanu is fit to face trial, that the sickness is not life-threatening, but Punch newspaper reporter at the court on Thursday reported that it was the Department of State Services, DSS lawyer, who happened to be one of the parties in the dispute that presented the NMA medical report before the court. We are yet to ascertain the independency, fairness, objectivity, accuracy and transparency of the Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, in conducting the medical examination. We have reported that Justice Muhammad Garba Umar of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja on Friday apparently rejected the plans by the Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Egbetoken, to stop the upcoming Monday, October 20th planned mass protests by Nigerians to demand the release of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, but, according to the organizer of the protest, Omiyele Sowore, after the judge initially declined to grant the Nigeria Police Force an ex-parte motion to stop the planned protest in the open court, the Federal High Court judge, Justice Umar, reportedly granted the motion in chambers, imposing a ban on protests at Aso Rock Villa, National Assembly, or Unity Fountain in Abuja. We await a certified true copy of the order, which our lawyers will review. The protest remains unstoppable. While this is ongoing, the United States, U.S. Embassy in Nigeria has warned American citizens to be far from the protest areas and limit their movements in the Nigeria capital city, Abuja, saying, the planned protest may lead to disruptions and violence. We had also reported that the Nigerian Army Authority has issued a statement, denying threat messages issued against members of the public ahead of the planned mass protest slated for October 20, 2025 to demand for the release and freedom of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, just as the organizer and chief campaigner, Omiyele Sowore, the publisher of Sahara Reporters News Media, met to seek understanding with the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, who, according to Sowore, promised to visit President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to discuss the issue with him.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Founder of Sahara Reporters News Media and the organizer of the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest, Omiyele Sowore, has refuted and debunked the reports circulating in some sections of the media that the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has stopped the upcoming Monday, October 20th mass protest organized to demand the release of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, saying, the media report is false and a calculated attempt to distract members of the public from coming out to join the protest, adding, Nnamdi Kanu is so sick that the people must come out now to set him free. The sickness, as alleged by Omiyele Sowore, apparently challenged the medical report issued by the Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, who had submitted its panel report before the trial court on Thursday that Nnamdi Kanu is fit to face trial, that the sickness is not life-threatening, but Punch newspaper reporter at the court on Thursday reported that it was the Department of State Services, DSS lawyer, who happened to be one of the parties in the dispute that presented the NMA medical report before the court, we are yet to ascertain the independency, fairness, objectivity, accuracy and transparency of the Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, in conducting the medical examination. In a statement on Saturday, Omiyele Sowore said, "The Federal High Court in Abuja has not stopped the proposed Free Nnamdi Kanu protest slated for Monday, October 20, 2025. Contrary to the misleading claims being circulated by police lawyers and sections of the media, no order was granted restraining citizens from exercising their constitutional right to peaceful assembly." Justice Umar of the Federal High Court declined to issue any ex-parte order sought by the police to halt the nationwide protest altogether. What exists is a purported court order, obtained in chambers by lawyers of the police, which has not been served on anyone, asking that protesters not protest at Aso Rock Villa, National Assembly, Eagle Square, and a certain Shehu Shigari Way, the latest false claims designed to confuse the public and discourage participation. The protest date is sacrosanct. The movement is unstoppable. In another statement, Omiyele Sowore said, "I was deeply involved in the struggle for the validation of the June 12th election, and I remember vividly how the system operated back then, how they weaponized the judiciary to buy time, to deceive the public, and to justify injustice. They kept saying, Abiola's case is in court, using that as a shield for tyranny, until they eventually killed him a day before his supposed release. It was a well-orchestrated tragedy disguised as legal processes. Today, I see the same script being replayed with Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the same manipulation, the same excuses, fake narrators, fake protesters, the same abuse of process. The language has not changed. Only the victims have. History is repeating itself before our eyes. And just as we fought to expose the truth then, we must do so now, before it's too late. The Nnamdi Kanu I saw in court on October 16th is very ill. We must rescue him before another citizen is sacrificed to the bloodthirsty Nigerian elite club." Punch newspaper had during the week reported that the Nigerian Medical Association on Thursday informed the Federal High Court in Abuja that the illness of the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, is not life-threatening. The medical panel set up by the NMA president said it had concluded the health assessment ordered by the court on the IPOB leader and found that Kanu is fit to stand trial. About 2 weeks ago, the trial judge, Justice James Omotosho, directed the association to independently assess Kanu's health status following conflicting medical reports presented by the defense and the prosecution. While DSS counsel, Mr. Awomolo Adigboyegba, SAN, maintained that Kanu's health could be adequately managed at the DSS medical facility, the defense counsel, Mr. Onyechi Ikpizu, SAN, insisted that his client's health was deteriorating and that he should be taken to the National Hospital for proper care. This prompted Justice Omotosho to order the NMA to conduct an independent medical examination to determine, among other things, whether the DSS medical facility could cater to Kanu's needs or if he should be transferred to the National Hospital as requested by the defense. The report is also expected to determine whether Kanu is fit to stand trial. However, at the previous sitting, Omotosho had to adjourn for October 16th, for the presentation of Kanu's medical examination report by the NMA due to the inability of the panel to conclude its assessment of the IPOB leader's health status and present its findings before the court. The DSS requested a 1-week adjournment to allow the NMA Medical Board to conclude its investigation. Kanu is currently being prosecuted by the federal government on charges relating to alleged terrorism. According to the panel's report, which was submitted to the court on October 13th, by the prosecution team led by Awomolo and partly read in open court during Thursday's proceedings, the medical body stated that the defendant's ailment does not pose any immediate danger to his life and confirmed that he is fit to stand trial. Relying on the medical findings and in the absence of any objection from counsel to the parties, Omotosho ruled that the court was satisfied that the defendant could proceed with his trial and okayed the medical facility of the DSS for his medical care. The judge consequently granted Kanu 6 consecutive days, beginning from October 23 to 30, to open and close. The defendant has until the 30th day of October to close his defense, Omotosho said. Additionally, Justice Omotosho granted an oral application by Kanu's lead counsel, Chief Kanu Agabi, SAN, seeking permission for a private consultation between the defendant and his legal team outside the Department of State Services premises. Agabi had argued that the defense team feared the discussions with Kanu might be monitored or recorded by the DSS. The court therefore approved that the private meeting be held within the courtroom, with only Kanu and his lawyers present. The consultation is scheduled to take place between 9 a.m. and 12 noon on October 22nd, ahead of the resumption of the trial on October 23rd. The court adjourned for continuation of the trial and commencement of Kanu's defense to the 23rd of October 2025. We had reported that Justice Muhammad Garba Umar of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja on Friday apparently rejected the plans by the Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Egbetoken, to stop the upcoming Monday, October 20th planned mass protests by Nigerians to demand the release of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, but, according to the organizer of the protest, Omoyele Sowore, after the judge initially declined to grant the Nigeria Police Force an ex-parte motion to stop the planned protest in the open court, the Federal High Court judge, Justice Umar reportedly granted the motion in chambers, imposing a ban on protests at Aso Rock Villa, National Assembly, or Unity Fountain in Abuja. We await a certified true copy of the order, which our lawyers will review. The protest remains unstoppable. While this is ongoing, the United States, U.S. Embassy in Nigeria has warned America citizens to be far from the protest areas and limit their movements in the Nigeria capital city, Abuja, saying, the planned protest may lead to disruptions and violence. We had also reported that the Nigerian Army Authority has issued a statement, denying threat messages issued against members of the public ahead of the planned mass protest slated for October 20, 2025 to demand for the release and freedom of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, just as the organizer and chief campaigner, Omoyele Sowore, the publisher of Sahara Reporters news media, met to seek understanding with the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, who, according to Sowore, promised to visit President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to discuss the issue with him.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way. Bringing you the news in a more digital way.